And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As Republican primary voters cast their ballots today in Florida, presidential candidate Mitt Romney is surging ahead of his rival Newt Gingrich in the polls. Florida has one of the country's highest foreclosure rates. 45% of homeowners are underwater, owing more for their homes than they're worth. Many are wondering how the candidates intend to help people who've lost their homes in the wake of the subprime mortgage crisis. Mitt Romney has said the country needs a president who helps lending institutions think creatively.
One of the reasons why people lose homes, of course, is they lose jobs. We've got a troubled economy. People lose homes as they lose their jobs. Now, the banks aren't bad people. They're just overwhelmed right now. The right course for America is to have a president who understands how to help our lending institutions be creative and find ways to keep people who can meet their payments stay in their homes. And I'll do that.
Meanwhile, Newt Gingrich was recently questioned by Suzanne Goldenberg of The Guardian on how he intends to help people who've lost their homes.
Mr. Speaker, we've been talking to people who are facing foreclosure, who've been foreclosed on, and one thing we keep hearing is that the policies that they're hearing from you about changing the tax structure, freeing up business, they don't seem to see the connection between their individual situation. What could you say today that would show that how that connection is made between top policies at the top and down, and how would you show that you personally understand this situation?
Well, I would say, first of all, that when Congress comes in on January 3rd, I'm going to ask it to repeal 3 bills. I'm going to ask it to repeal Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, and Sarbanes-Oxley. Dodd-Frank is a direct hit on the housing system in Florida. Dodd-Frank kills small banks, drives down small business, and makes it very difficult to have housing loans. The federal regulators are very anti-housing loans. I just had a friend who bought a house in a circumstance where it was a short sale. He offered in May, and he completed in December. And that's the impact of the federal government. That's entirely the impact of the federal government. So you get the regulators out of the way, and you will, in fact, find it easier to sell houses, and you'll see the economy, you'll see the price of housing go back up.
That was Newt Gingrich. Well, as homeowners across the nation struggle with foreclosure, we look at a new investigation by ProPublica and NPR News that reveals how the taxpayer-owned mortgage giant Freddie Mac made multi-billion-dollar investments that profited if borrowers stayed stuck in high-interest mortgages. Freddie Mac began increasing these investments dramatically in late 2010. At the same time, it was making it harder for homeowners to get out of such mortgages. Now, several U.S. lawmakers and prominent economists are calling for Congress and the White House to end this financial conflict of interest. All of this comes just 1 week after President Obama promised no more red tape for homeowners looking to refinance. For more, we're joined by one of the journalists who broke this story, Jesse Eisinger. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning senior reporter at ProPublica, covering Wall Street and finance. Eisinger's recent piece is called Freddie Mac Bets Against American Homeowners. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Jesse.
Hi, thanks for
Lay
having
it
me.
out. What did you find?
Sure. What we found is that Freddie Mac entered into some complex mortgage securities investments, starting to ramp up really in late 2010. And what these investments did essentially is to take a kind of risky slice of a complex mortgage arrangement and bet that people could not refinance their mortgages. They would lose money if lots of people got refinancings. At the same time, they made it harder for people to get those refinancings because Freddie is one of the key gatekeepers about who gets loans for their homes.
Explain who owns Freddie.
Freddie right now is owned by taxpayers. It used to be a quasi-government private partnership, but in 2008 it failed and taxpayers took it over, and now it's run by the government agency that also regulates it, the Federal Housing Finance Agency.
So it's basically owned by the very homeowners it's betting against.
Exactly. We own Freddie Mac.
How did it get involved with betting against refinancing mortgages?
Well, it has a multi-hundred-billion-dollar investment portfolio, and it's making investments all the time and doing complex kinds of things to protect itself from big swings in interest rates, for instance. But what Congress has done and the U.S. Treasury has done is they said when they took these companies over, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are the two companies they took over, they said you have to reduce your portfolios. We want you to reduce your portfolios because you're taking too much risk. So this can be seen as part of that, which is actually somewhat violating the spirit of that, because they're selling off investments, but they're actually keeping the risk of them. So they're complying with the letter, but not the spirit of the intent.
Isn't Freddie Mac supposed to make it easier for people to be able to get a mortgage?
Yes. One of the mandates of Freddie Mac is that it's supposed to be making loans available to people, helping the housing market and helping banks make loans available to people. They insure loans, and the mandate is for them to make financing available.
Talk about Gingrich's ties to Freddie Mac.
Well, Newt Gingrich, who has nothing to do with our story, he's not mentioned in our story, but he has run into political trouble because he consulted for Freddie Mac and made over $1 million, I believe, consulting with them. The question was, what was he actually doing? And he came out and said that he was giving his services as a historian, academic historian, but he's been criticized because it looks like lobbying.
Freddie's regulator, the Federal Housing Finance Agency, late Monday issued a statement saying it began assessing Freddie Mac's controversial investment strategy last year. The agency said that in December, quote, Freddie Mac agreed that these transactions would not resume pending completion of the examination work. Talk about the Federal Housing Finance Agency role in all of this.
Well, this is very interesting. So this is a relatively new agency that was created after the old agency that oversaw these was unwound. And these guys don't just regulate Fannie and Freddie. They also are in the conservator for Fannie and Freddie. Fannie and Freddie are in conservatorship. And so what that means is that they're actually like the board of directors and the shareholders of this company. The federal government, this regulator, is responsible for these companies' decisions. Ultimately, and they're headed by an acting director now that the Obama administration has butted heads with and has tried to essentially get rid of, but they can't.